We're not recording yet. We're going to record in a minute. I'm going to fix the headers right now because I am so prepared. Yeah, I'm like a real professional here, fixing my stuff on the fly. Nope, that's not the one I wanted to fix. That's the one I wanted to fix. 8-4. Done. Sweet. All right. I'm pressing some buttons now. Here we go.
Recording in progress.
It's a trap! The champ is here! The evil genius!
Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time.
I have not begun to project my anger onto you.
Okay, terrific.
Flawless victory.
Oh man, we're back. It's a Wednesday, and I'm here. This is incredible. Hi, how have you been? What's going on? Where are you? Are you good? Are you well? I hope you are. I genuinely hope you are. I missed you. Last week, I was busy. That's going to happen sometimes. Mainly because, you know, I got to pay bills and do work and stuff. But it's really, really nice to be here. It's really, really wonderful to see you one more time. And I look forward to whatever the hell happens next. Because, this is going to be a good one. So, ladies and gentlemen, guys, gals, non-binary pals, friends, writers, makers, doers, dreamers, hopers, dancers, high-class hoes, low-class hoes, farmers, farmers' daughters, hey, anybody who enjoys a bagel, anybody who knows what a good schmear looks like, anybody who knows how to change their own oil, anybody who can tell the front side of a baguette from the rear side, anybody who's ever worked customer service, people writing all different kinds of things on your first day, your last day, your 50th day, your 600th day, your 40th draft, your 20th draft. Big giant enthusiasts of wrestling news, big giant enthusiasts of things that explode, and most importantly, the comrades. Welcome to the Writer's Chat for August the 4th, and through no fault of my own, I continue to be John Adamus, the writer next door, and it is my distinct and absolute pleasure to welcome you here one more time. If somehow, some way, streaming across Twitch and YouTube and in Zoom, this is the first time you're hearing this or checking this out, welcome. I hope you're doing well. I look forward to your continued patronage. And here's what we're doing here for the next couple hours. I've got, since the last time we spoke, actually, if we're really going to split hairs, 2 weeks worth of questions right here in my hand. And it's my pleasure to bring you answers to those questions, as well as the answers of those people in chat. Twitch, say hi to YouTube. YouTube, say hi to Twitch. Both of you guys, say hi to Zoom. Hey, look at that. We're all getting to know each other, building a community. Isn't that delightful? I look forward to hearing from you. I hope you're doing well. And of course, well, we are starting. There we go. We are starting with question number 1. Here we are. How early? Notice this week they're numbered. Hey, look at that. You guys make suggestions and I deliver. They're numbered and they're bigger so you can read them on your phone. Go me. Question number 1. How early into an MS should I start bringing up my theme? Now, there's no fixed spot, right? There's no like magic rule that says, oh, you're 6 pages in, you're 110 words in, that's where you start. There's no fixed point. Ideally, you're going to bring it up as soon as possible. But that's a really subjective thing, because in theory, you could start from sentence 1, slightly and slowly, gradually developing the item or idea that is your theme. It could be in the first sentence. It could be in the end of chapter 1. It could be on the first page. It could be 10 pages in. As long as it's there somewhere, present throughout the majority of the story, you're good. You do not want to get into a position where you are randomly out of the blue introducing your theme in the mid to late second act. If you've gotten that far and you're realizing, oh, I forgot the theme, no, it's not going to work there. It's going to feel really, really forced there because, in fact, you will be forcing it. Theme is a thread, or if you want something more natural, theme is a river with a current that flows through your story. And if you all of a sudden start late with it, that current's going to feel real janky and unnatural. We want a nice, smooth flow of theme all the way through your story. And to do that best, you want to start it mid to late first act, and then all the way through the climax, into the resolution, so it's nice and neatly packaged. And there's no one single spot. This isn't like where we just put a dab of it in there and call it a day. This is a nice, even spread of butter on toast or jelly on bread or whatever it is you eat, where it's nice and evenly throughout the story in lots of different places to lots of different degrees. You need theme. Theme's really important. Theme is the thing. If you're not sure what a theme is the lesson the reader can take from your story and install in their own lives. So if you can't figure out what that theme might be, get to figuring. It's real important. Get to figuring. And you need it throughout because it's not an insignificant story device. It's what's going to pull everything together. It's what's going to hold your plot together. It's what's going to be the thing taught to the reader by the character's actions. It's going to help the world feel grounded because accomplishing the theme and delivering the theme should be part of the world building exercise you do, because let's say your theme is you have to stand up to bullies. Chances are your world building and setup and everything has been laying a conditional set where there are bullies to stand up to. And it all sort of comes together like that. It's really, 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 really important. Side note, small note. I don't know if you can hear this, and I'm sure somebody in one of the chats will tell me, but there are shrieking, hollering children, like, 160 feet out my window. If it gets real bad, I'm going to throw on polka music and close my window. But for now, we're just going to enjoy the ambiance of horrible children. I mean, not all children are horrible, but these children, these are the sort of children you want to consign to manual labor for a little while. Or maybe give them something to chew that glues their teeth together. They're just, they should be attacking Sam Jackson and Laura Dern on the park. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. But back to theme. Earlier is better than later. Frequently is better than rarely. Great first question. We're off to a hell of a start. Let's go. How do you write? Question number 2. How do you write a flat character arc? Okay. All right. Look, sometimes in this world, depending on what you're writing, depending on your genre, depending on the kind of character, kind of stuff you're saying, sometimes you do not want your character arc to be a roller coaster. Sometimes, now granted, this is rare, but sometimes you want your character's sort of not movement through an arc to be illustrative of a problem. For example, let's say you are intentionally writing an apathetic character, sort of a sad sack who watches the world go around because sometime later in another story, you're going to introduce the fact that this character gets their shit together. What you need to do at that point is start then with a flat character arc. And a flat arc, whether it's a character arc or an overall big picture macro arc. We talked about those on Monday night. If you want to check out that VOD, it's also available on Twitch and on YouTube now. But the benefit of a flat arc is that you can take as long as you want to set up all the pieces you need to, because it doesn't change, or there's very little fluctuation and there's very little change. The critical thing there for a flat arc is you've got to find a different way to keep your reader engaged. Because if the character isn't really going up and down and up and down the sawtooth of emotional change or variation or intensity or agency, there's got to be something to engage the reader. The danger of a flat arc is that nobody knows why they should be reading your book. It's boring. It's dull. It's just kind of there. And we should all do more than just have a character be present, especially if they're the protagonist. The last thing you want to actively seek out is a protagonist that doesn't do anything in their own story. They're just sort of present while other characters, even if it's the love interest, even if it's the best friend or the co-protagonist, if it's the point of view character, they've got to be doing stuff in the story. There's no way around it. But you want to write a flat arc by eliminating the variation. We're going to get real technical here. You want to try to eliminate the variation between perceived emotional temperature and actual emotional temperature. And that's all in how the character feels the vibe. That's the easiest way to think about it. Would you like an example of a character with a flat arc? The Big Lebowski. The dude abides. The dude has a flat arc. Now, he goes through situations in the story. He does have emotional depth. He does, they do piss on his rug and, try to kill him, and, he gets knocked out a couple times. It's a big thing. So do not confuse flat arc for lacking affect. It's just a flat arc doesn't have any sort of travel in terms of this character is going to grow and change over the course of a story. The character is going to progress through a story by accomplishing tasks or going through situations or trying to resolve a certain thing, like figuring out why Tara Reid would hack off a toe and then have to go deal with some nihilist at the bowling alley. But the growth of the character is more about the progression of the things the character has done. They did this, they did this, they did this, they did this, which is different than I've learned a vital lesson and I've changed my ways for good or for ill. But it just comes about understanding that the perceived emotional temperature, how big a deal a character thinks something is, really lines up nicely with the actual emotional temperature, how much of a big deal it really is in the outside world. Getting those two numbers to synchronize, they think it's a 6 out of 10. It actually is a 6 out of 10. They just kind of go through like it's a 6 out of 10. Plateaus everything. It's like chopping the tops off mountains so you just get flat ends. That's a flat character arc. I know an arc implies a curve, but that's the term in writing. But a flat arc is an arc that just progresses through scenes with no real variation or substantial change for a character. The benefit, you can have all the crazy stuff in the world happen and orbit around the character. Everything else gets to be wild, and the protagonist gets to be pretty central, pretty ordinary. Maybe they're just a regular guy, and then they stick out their thumb and they're sucked into a galactic hitchhiking journey. That's not a great example because they end up taking agency and having a more pronounced arc. But initially, they start off flat. Yes, Ferris Bueller's Day Off is another excellent one because Ferris is unchanged from the course of everything to the point where Ferris Bueller is almost a sociopath. But it's still technically a flat arc because in the end of the day, he still makes it home before his parents. And real life pedophile, it's not Martin Mull, is it? Principal Rooney, the real life pedophile guy, he's the one experiencing the yo-yoing up and down of things. So is his sister, so is Charlie Sheen, so is Alan Ruck, so is that other lady, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody else is up and down, and he's even keeled. Ferris Bueller is an excellent example. Good stuff. All right. Shall we move on to question 3? I think we should. Question 3. This one came up in Discord this week, or last week. At some point in the previous things, this one came up. How do I make my voice less formal? Now, you see this with a lot of young writers. You see this with a lot of writers who have an expectation as to how they think they're supposed to sound. They believe that they need to speak in a very full sentence, non-contracted way with a language nice and even. And if you were to read it aloud, you would read it with somewhat of a monotone or perhaps a presentational voice as though you were, speaking deeply into a microphone to tell everyone that this is CNN or something, where there's this level of presentation and artifice to voice. When what that in fact does is make a reader less likely to engage with your work. Formality is kind of the live ammunition side of professionalism. It's a label applied and absorbed by people for the benefit of others. It doesn't do anything. Sounding formal does not mean you're a better writer. Sounding formal makes it sound like you have a stick wedged rectally. You don't need to sound formal. Being formal doesn't mean you've got a better handle on, how you're writing scenes or how you're getting the sentences across. If anything, it just makes you sound uptight. How you fix that? You take more time to write more sentences. You slow things down. You vary your sentence length. You change your words, your word choice. You fix your structure. You throw in some commas. You have your characters be imperfect. You steer the reader mentally. I want you to pay attention over here. Now pay attention over here. Now look over this way. Now look over that way. Now zoom in here. Picture this. Picture it this way. Picture it that way. You are directing and you're active in steering the reader's perception through the story. It's going to adopt a less formal tone as you do that, only because you are moving more. You're not just sticking the camera on a virtual tripod. You're not saying, reader, stand in the door and watch the whole scene and then turn left and then watch the next scene. There's not a stiffness to anybody's relationship to each other in the course of the story. You just need to relax. Longer sentences, contractions, profanity, punctuation, loads of different techniques, loads of different structural things can affect how voice sounds. But once you start sounding formal, it's pretty hard to scrub out. Even your pitch and your query don't need to be formal. They just need to be. There is no one right, there is no one best way to craft a book. Doesn't matter what the genre is, doesn't matter how big it is, doesn't matter if it's your first book, doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how you identify, doesn't matter whatever. Formality in your voice is holding you back. You don't have to try so hard. People will still like you. In fact, they might even like you more because you've taken a deep breath, you've slackened your shoulders, and you're coming at this as though we are talking to our best friend, and we're just trying to paint the most accurate picture for them through our word choice, through our text. And then it's just practice, 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 practice. This is not something you can only solve through editing. Editing can point it out. Editing can flag it. So bringing in a professional can help, but it still comes down to you in the revision process, the act of rewriting based on notes, based on edits, based on critique. You're the one in charge of your voice. If you try to take a formal voice and edit it to be informal, it's going to feel very forced. It's going to feel weird and a little janky and unnatural. And that's what we're trying to avoid. So practice, relax, take your time, work on your story structure. Your voice over time will smooth out. But the biggest thing you can do to affect your voice, don't take it so seriously. It's not that big a deal. Just put the picture in the reader's head and prioritize that above everything else, and it'll come with time. Excellent third question. For the moment, I wanted to make a slide for this, but instead I will just ask, does anybody in any of the chats, anywhere, have a question about anything?
I have a question.
Yes. Yeah, what's your question?
My question is that when I'm in a critique group and I'm presented with one of my critique partners' pieces to give advice on, what should I be looking for?
Can I get an example and I'll give you a clearer answer?
Okay, like someone, like, am I looking for, yeah, unfortunately I can't think of like a
Okay,
specific example.
all right. So I'm going to ask some more questions for follow-up. We'll see if we can narrow this down. Is it because you're wanting to give a certain specific kind of criticism? Like you want to focus on character? Or are you asking if there's supposed to be a priority for critique overall?
Is there supposed to be a priority for critique overall?
Gotcha. The answer is no. You can critique whatever you want, however you want, whenever you want. It can be helpful if you, for the sake of all the critique you're giving to whomever you're giving it to, it can be helpful if you give, you always do things in a certain order. You always address character first, or you always address plot first. You always address this first. You always address that first. That's up to you. But in critique in general, it's free form and open-ended enough that you can figure out whatever method you want. You just want to be as clear as possible in whatever critique you do give. Some recipients of critique like it better when it's more organized, so that you're not just hodgepodging like, oh my God, there's this and this, and oh, don't forget about this. You want to be, smooth about it. But there's no set magic order. For me, what I have always told people is find the biggest issue. Start there and then dial down in scale and importance. So if somebody's writing something and their biggest issue is world building, that's where you start with this person. And then you work through an order of priority, because somebody else's biggest issue might be you just need to hit the enter key and make some paragraphs. It's always about prioritizing what you critique is difficult because you're always prioritizing that balance between like, I think this information will help you versus I think this information is doable for you, because I can critique something without meaning to come down like, a sack of hammers on somebody. But when I tell them like, okay, so you're fundamentally missing your character arc in this thing, it can crush somebody. And you're forever weighing you really need to work on this thing, but how do I deliver it in a way that's actionable for you, that's going to actually give you a sense that you didn't just outright fail. So part of this comes down from reading the room, which is not always the easiest thing for people, because people, when they tend to critique, they don't want critique. They want comment, which isn't the same thing. But there's no magic order for priority. You set your own priority, but just be consistent with it. And over time, especially if you're meeting with the same group over and over again, people will know, when Jessie is critiquing, then it's going to come a certain way. I know to expect. She's going to hit me with this first. Okay, I'm ready. My loins are girded, metaphorically, I guess, or it might even be literally. Who knows? Depends on your critique group, I suppose. But there's no magic order. Just start with the big stuff and work down.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question. I'm sorry it wasn't a faster question, but it was a really, really good one I had to think about.
Yeah, it helped. Thank you.
Twitch sound check. I'm fine. I'm not dropping. Okay. If it changes on my end, I should get a warning. I haven't seen anything, but I'll let you know. I can dial myself up. I'm a little low, but that's mostly because Monday I was told I was blowing somebody out. But I can also get all up on the mic if you want. I'm happy to do that too. It's just going to sound very after dark if I do, which I'm also fine with because I enjoy the sound of my own voice. I didn't get enough hugs as a child. Any other questions? All right. Off we go to the races. Question number 4. No, 4. Come on, click the thing. There we go. So this question I don't think has ever been asked. And it's sort of related to an idea of what I'm kicking around for September, October, and November. Probably the rest of a school year, typically. What constitutes an essay? What actually defines an essay? Essay, the thing you write in school all the time. There's a lot of disagreement on this because it's a range of things, and some people skew high on that range, and other people take that range and ignore it entirely. But it works like this. An essay is any collection of paragraphs tied together by a single cohesive topic or topic sentence, or it's also called a theme sentence or a purpose sentence. They're all the same thing. Multiple paragraphs tied around a single idea, developed sequentially and hierarchically, meaning the stuff at the top is more important than the stuff at the bottom. And we're moving all our way through the essay, and it's usually capped somewhere under 1,200 words. Sometimes they want to cap it 1,000. Sometimes it's 1,100. Sometimes it's 12. Sometimes it's 600. Whatever. Essay stops at 1,200. That doesn't necessarily mean it has citations or specific, sometimes people, especially some schools, are all about use the MLA or use APA or use this, that, or the other, use Chicago, all that. That doesn't necessarily affect whether or not it's an essay. That's just the extra stuff you need to do. If you got to do footnotes, you got to do parenthetical citation, you need a works cited, all that stuff. That doesn't affect the fact that you've written an essay. Just the writing itself is what makes an essay. And the reason this comes up, other than it being a really fascinating question, is because one of the things I want to do, and I don't really know how to do it because I don't really deal enough with a younger crowd until I really came to like Twitch and stuff and YouTube. I want to be able to help people with homework. Like, that's really important to me because homework sucked. And if I had somebody like me who could sit there and go, okay, look, here's how you write this kind of paper. I'm not going to write it for you. You couldn't pay me enough to go back to school. Thank you. I went for more than enough degrees already. But if I can explain to you how to do a thing, I think that'd be really valuable. I think that'd be really helpful, even for college, because I was too busy in college trying to get other things done rather than schoolwork. So this was really a thing that got me thinking. I haven't made any plans. I'll probably make an announcement on Twitter before I do anything else. I'm noodling on it in Discord. If you're a member of the Patreon or you're on Discord, by all means, come chat with me, I suppose, about it. But an essay is just a collection of paragraphs tied around a single idea. Some teachers love them. Some teachers use them as sort of litmus tests for all these other things. They read into it like, oh, how well you've written that speaks to this thing and this assumption I make about you and that assumption I make about you. It's not entirely grounded because sometimes they just want a reason to justify their thinking without actually having to do any work. But an essay is just a size thing. As with so many other parts of writing, it all comes down to size. And I guess other parts of life too, I suppose. That's what makes an essay. Let me go to question 5. Can you just imagine the face I'm making for question 5? Does using text-to-speech count as real writing? Just take a second. Just wherever you are right now. Just hold up. Of course, it counts as real writing. Just because you don't have the ability to access a keyboard, or because you don't have a pen, or you don't have an ability or facility to use either of those things, you are still accomplishing the act that we recognize as writing, even if you are not using the verb writing to do it. Text-to-speech counts because you're still imparting your thought through a medium for someone else's consumption. It totally counts. Accessibility and usability do not prevent creativity. If anything, they facilitate it. Totally counts. I would label this kind of question as like a Facebook group question. It's that level of like slightly irritating, slightly obtuse, passively on some level, ableist, or passively on some level, patriarchally, heterosexist or normative in some way. Because, yeah, of course it's real writing. Just because somebody else uses text-to-speech and you type and it takes you longer than them doesn't mean that just because they're done faster doesn't mean neither of you are writing. It's not a competition like that. To commodify the competitiveness is to leech the creativity out of the art and turn it into another capitalistic profit drive, comrade. That's not good. We don't want to be doing that. Also, you really don't want to be shitting on people who use things like text-to-speech because that, 1, it's a shitty thing to do, and 2, it makes you look like a dick. So yes, text-to-speech totally, absolutely, positively counts. Also, side note, last note, no one put you in charge of what does and doesn't count. And I know you can make that same argument at me, except I have a microphone. So, ha-ha, ho-ho, hee-hee. It totally counts. Why you gotta gatekeep? Stop it. Just stop it. Good question, though. By the way, if you are using text-to-speech, I would love to have a conversation with you. I have some questions about stuff. I'm going to go to question 6. We're just mowing right along tonight. Question 6, what is the best time to start marketing your book with pre-orders, Facebook ads, and all that stuff building up to your release date. Oh, okay. Get a piece of paper. We're going to break this down into steps. Here's marketing in a nutshell. Now, I'm going to speak about this generally because you're going to tailor this to your own book, because that's up to you, and what you're doing is different than what everybody else is doing. But I want to give you a rough roadmap and talk about things kind of conceptually, okay? When you start writing, even if it's draft 1 we're talking about, right? When you start writing and you tell somebody, oh my God, I've started this new idea. I'm really hype about it. There's this going on in this part, and I like this and I like that. And you tell other people, and they like your tweet, or they hit you with an emoji or something, or they thumbs up, or whatever the shit it is. That's marketing. It is, because you're telling people about this thing that will be available later. You're making somebody excited about a thing you're doing. It's marketing. We don't see it like that, and we need to, but that's when marketing starts. And in the course of writing, as you're working on first draft to second draft to third draft, through revisions, through this and through that, then yeah. And you still talk about like, I'm slogging a day through this action scene, wrote this great thing, wrote 1,000 words, didn't delete everything after I wrote it. All those things that you say to get sympathy or get attention or get praise or get validation. Not that any of those things are bad, but anything you're doing to inform people as to the status of your effort can be construed as marketing. So you're writing and you're writing and you're writing, and you finally reach that point where you're done. You've got your draft set up the way you want. You know what the next step is. It's done. We're not revising it one more time. The editor sent it back. Everything's cool. You've marked it final version 3. You're done. We're locked in. From that moment, the shift becomes more about marketing and prep than production. It's a different kind of production. Now it's marketing production. So from there, if you haven't started already, back when you were nearly done, this is where you'd start looking for your cover. And the marketing you want to do in and around your cover is first to solicit a cover artist. So you would be, saying, hey, I've got this book. Here's what this is. Here's what this is. Here's the budget I have. You'd be giving the particulars, and you'd be talking to specific artists using language to hype the book. But let's assume you find your artist, or you put together your own cover. That's fine too. But let's say you get the cover handled. From there, you want to start marketing through your social media channels, whether that's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or all of the above, and your newsletter, if you're doing one of those, and your website and your blog and all those other channels for you. That's fine too. Where you start, if you haven't already seen the cover, or you don't really know a lot about the book, this is where you can start to package these ideas into larger, digestible pieces. Some of those pieces immediately go to Facebook and Twitter as just posts. Sometimes, though, you can, transpose them into ads. Sometimes it's just going to be newsletters that go out where you've got a combination of visual material, the cover, and some words, a pitch, a blurb, whatever. This is also where you can, if you're getting reviews or positive feedback from bloggers or other critiquers or other authors, and you've just got people like strengthening your social net and building you some cred, this is where you mention that, hey, these 3 authors, they like my book, and these are my poll quotes, and this is my stuff. That's this level where this starts to come in. And then from there, you're going to move into collecting pre-orders, writing your sales copy, making sure all the ducks are in a row so that as we get nearer to the intended release date and the pre-orders start to accumulate, you're working already from having your sales copy made. You're working you're leaning back on and perpetuating the stuff you had out on social media from way back when, and you are able to, perhaps in a newsletter, perhaps in a blog post, perhaps in a lengthy Facebook post, perhaps in a TikTok, if you really want to do some editing, whatever. You are able to stitch together all the way from the beginning. It started with this tweet. There's that meme. Here's how it started. Here's where it is today. It started with this tweet. Oh my God, started a new project, to today, pre-order link. You want to be able to build a kind of chain of evidence that way. That's the best kind of marketing because it creates a groundswell that somebody long-term can attach to. You don't want to do all your marketings. You don't want to start marketing day one the minute book writing day 300 is over. You don't want to wait till the book is done to start the marketing because you're Sisyphus. You're pushing the boulder up the hill. You're making it infinitely harder for yourself, and it's never going to be to the same degree and in the same position it could be had you started smaller way back when. I know you didn't have a lot to talk about when you were, talking about writing and giving updates, but it all accumulates. It's just one step after the other after the other. So honestly, the best time is at the beginning. The second best time is as you are nearing the end of the drafting stage. The least preferable time, though it is still possible, and I watched people today on social media do it, the least possible, the least ideal, the least beneficial time to do it is after the writing is done, where you feels like you're starting from a complete standstill and picking back up and moving in a new direction with the marketing. I don't want you to fall in that position. I don't want you to get stuck like that. It's frustrating. It's frustrating to observe. It's frustrating as a consumer. It's frustrating as a writer. We can make this all easier just by having you start sooner and rolling the snowball down the hill. That's the important thing. Good question otherwise. All right. I'm going to get another mouthful of water. Any other questions? And yes, I'm aware that I sound like this. I don't know. It's not dropping on my end. If you're having issues, I have no sense of it, and therefore I know not what I can control to adjust it. If I could, I would. All right. Shall we? Questions? Twitch? YouTube? Zoom? All right. We're going to march on. 7. Okay, it's been 2 weeks. I do not remember the context this question came in. It's a good question, and I feel like there was supposed to be a story I'm supposed to relate to you with it. I can't remember it. Things have gone on in the world. My brain is a little mush. So anyway, question 7. If I get rejected with my 3rd draft, does that mean I should immediately go start the 4th draft? No? Question mark? That is not as straightforward a question as you might imagine it to be, because the choice is yours. If you get rejected with your 3rd draft, are we talking about like I only got rejected once? Like I sent it to one person and they rejected it? Are we talking about how everybody who's seen the 3rd draft has rejected it? There's not enough context there for me to conclude, because it's possible that your query letter was the problem. Because if your query letter sucks, they haven't read the 3rd draft. The query letter put them so far off the idea of publication, they didn't read the manuscript. That happens the majority of times. So I'm assuming if you're taking this at face value and your 3rd draft got rejected, the query letter was fine and the draft's the problem. It's up to you if you want to determine that the best solution is therefore not just take a break / query other people. It's up to you to decide if you want to jump to the 4th draft. The pattern I would advise against diving into head first would be this idea of the minute you get rejected, the minute you run into critique, the minute you run into a problem, the minute you run into anything that isn't glowing, super hot, radioactive praise, please don't immediately assume you need to start over. I was talking about this minutes before we started tonight. If you, as a writer, are the sort of person who, upon meeting criticism or meeting rejection or meeting feedback, determines that the best thing to do is to scrap everything and start over, you're not going to get where you want to be ever. If you never develop the ability to finish, how are you supposed to move forward? Just because someone rejected you, just because you got a bad note, just because you got a lot of edits, just because you got critiqued, just because the sun wasn't streaming through the window and alighting you with radiant magic, does not mean that everything is so bad you have to start over. Constantly running back to the beginning to try and recapture the excitement of, oh my God, I'm starting a new project, is the same kind of immature, panicked energy that separates a writer from a published writer. Because you have to, as a part of this job, you have to learn how to keep going amid frustration, adversity, slow progress, inaccurate progress, messiness, feedback, etc. I don't know if you should immediately go start your fourth draft. I honestly think if you got rejected for your third draft, you should reassess why you got rejected. Check the query letter, possibly consider having somebody look at your third draft, and then using some kind of professional assistance or better tools than just, I don't really know how I feel today, using some kind of other metric other than like a mood ring, then make the decision to go on to a fourth draft. Figure out why first before we suddenly go, no, I'm just going to go back and do another draft. Because if that's your process, I'm just going to keep making a draft until somehow suddenly somebody knows something about how I want to be, you are going to run into trouble. It's going to go poorly for you. There's nothing wrong with a fourth draft, by the way. It's not like, oh my God, you're writing a fourth draft. How dare you? You must be terrible at this. It's just a fourth draft. Oh man, it took you 4 tries. It's not going to matter if it's published. Because it'll just be, well, I got published. Fine. That's the end result. You were going to get published on your third draft or fourth draft or 10th draft. It doesn't matter. Anybody who's going to engage in a urinary or a genital measuring contest as to, how many drafts it took is generally not somebody whose feedback you should be soliciting. Because it just doesn't matter. It's just not important. But I don't directly know how to answer this question. Depends on the context you got rejected in. Sometimes for some people it's great. For other people, not so much. So go seek more wisdom and then figure out what you want to do. Otherwise, great question. Question 8. What does, sort of related to the last one, what does an agent or editor use to determine whether or not they leave notes on a query? I am really surprised that this doesn't come up more often. That this isn't, a thing more people have asked in more detail. This might be the first time it's come up all year. I'm not entirely sure. I know I've talked about it not in a stream and not on a recording, but this might be the first time I'm putting it down like with the red dot blinking. So here we go. Let's cover it. In part, the first major factor is time. A lot of agents, for any number of reasons, have a lot of queries to get through in a short amount of time. And for as much as they would just love to, I don't know why that toggled off, but for as much as they would just love to absolutely, give everybody the same amount of response, they can't. Now, in part, they're going to hide behind that. Let's be real here. In part, they're going to hide and go, well, I can't give everybody the same amount of attention, and if I do it for one, I do it for all. So, it doesn't come down to, I don't have the time. At that level, it comes down to, I don't want to. And I think we all need to be more honest about that, because sometimes when you get a query and it's bad, it's really easy to reject it, because explaining the number of things that need to be done to make it better could take a while. And it's also possible that the person to whom you are writing to explain that it would take a while and would need all these things, they can always just go, well, you're wrong. And that's a pretty frustrating position. I've been in that position several times. It's never easy, but it is a reality of it. You don't know how the person is going to respond to your notes if you left them. You have to leave possibly a lot of notes. Sometimes, here's the other factor, not everybody knows how to verbalize or explain what's wrong with it. They can just go, ugh, that's not the thing I'm looking for, but they couldn't detail it past that. Now, part of that's going to be a lack of education. Part of that's going to be you're talking to somebody who maybe doesn't have a lot of experience in this. They don't know the technical terms. They don't know the language. They don't know how to explain how to fix it. They're going to hide behind that argument of, well, I know what I like when I see it, which is that same sort of horse shit when you take somebody out for dinner and you're like, well, what do you want? And they stare at the menu for 25 minutes until you're ready to leave. It's the same nonsense. Absolutely the same thing, only now instead of like your dinner date being on the line, now it's your creative effort. But first and foremost, it's time. Past that, it's education. Can I explain this to you in a way you're going to understand? Can I explain this at all? Third, do I really want to? Am I afraid that you're going to leave some kind of hate mail at me? Are you going to get mad at me? Am I going to get death threats? Now, I'm a dude, so I don't really I get my fair share of threats, but nowhere near what a woman or a female identifying agent or editor gets in terms of death and rape threats and violence and all that stuff. And that happens regularly. The minute you tell somebody, this thing sucks, they're immediately going to assume that you're just saying that because you're of a different identity than they are. Because everybody should be telling me how great I am because I'm a writer or something. Or I'm so grossly insecure that, I need only to hear good things because any alteration to that affects my worldview so significantly that I'm a shitty person otherwise. Time, education, possibility of feedback. Other thing, sometimes you don't want to explain what's wrong with it because it's so far off base that it's just not worth it. If you were to, let's use a non-query example for a second. Let's suppose we are at we're at a market. We're buying some produce. And you are specifically looking for stuff for a salad with dinner tonight. And we're walking up and down, checking out all the stalls, talking to people and everything. And we find one vendor that has, let's pick something that's really far out. You find one vendor that is selling candles. They're very nice candles. Maybe they're interesting. Maybe they smell nice. Maybe they're a certain size or they're just the right color or whatever. They're nice, but you're looking for stuff for a salad. And we can do a lot with candles, but eating them is probably not the best thing we can do. And to explain to the candle guy how you're looking for lettuce and how it would be really great if the candle guy suddenly stopped making candles and started making lettuce, it's just not worth it because the candle guy's over here on the candle and we just got to let him be there. It's important. Now, all the stuff I just explained to you is not what they're going to tell you on social media. Because what they're going to try and tell you on social media is that, oh, golly gee shucks, there's just, I get so much work, you guys. There's so much to do. And I just can't. I'm in, my inbox is just filled, and I do the best I can. And in part, that's true. But you have to remember that the vast majority of people at their job don't want to do their job. That's true for anybody working in a capitalist society because work grinds us down to a nub. And honestly, how long would it take to write an email? Even if it were detailed, an hour, 25 minutes, 45 minutes? Even if I wrote it over the course of a day, is that bad? Is that real hard? It's a balancing act, especially in traditional publishing, to balance the illusion of living in the ivory tower with the practicality of actually helping people produce the thing you say you're looking for, with the ability to do it at all whatsoever. Time, education, ability, interest. Those are the four things that most agents and editors use to leave notes on a query. any combination of those to any degree, any percentage of those contribute in some way as to whether or not you got notes at all. When you do get notes, it is usually broadly vague. Well, your character didn't work for me. Oh, your plot felt immaterial. I couldn't connect to things. And that's the 20% of the iceberg above the water. That's something you have to like figure, oh, what the hell does that mean? You got to get out your decoder ring and crack that down. And it probably at some point, honestly, I should do a stream maybe on a Monday where I just walk through what all that nonsense means. Probably be super helpful to do that. But it comes down to the idea of I'm not engaging with it for some reason. Either you're not relaying the information at all, or you're not relaying it in a way that it is clear to me. You're not building the bridge to the reader in the way you should. I'm just dressing that up with either I'm not connecting with your language, or I don't get your plot, or I don't, the pages felt funny on my fingers, or my coffee needs more sugar. I don't fucking know. It's just a thing. But on the whole, it's those 4 traits we talked about. Take that as you like it. Honestly, if you ever want to get into like agent editor questions, fire away. I'm all ears. Since we're only 50 minutes in and we're practically done, I'm going to stop and ask for questions here. I forgot if this was you, but I recently read about somebody who read Slush and used to send feedback. Yes, that was me. I did get in trouble. I lost a job for writing feedback. You never understood why it was bad. Here's why it was bad. I wasn't allowed to do it, and I was doing it anyway. I was deviating from the chain of command because I was just a low person on the totem pole. And I, at the time, admittedly, was not much of an expert. I was merely taking the notes people had told me and then writing them down. I myself was not making a great deal of like concerted opinions. I wasn't an expert in my field at the time. I was new. So I would say, people in meetings have said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things. Here you go. Hopefully that would inspire them or educate them or motivate them or kick them in the pants or whatever so that they could solve things. Only now, 2 decades later, can I sit here and go, okay, here's what you're going to do to fix this. Here's a roadmap. These are the tools that might help you. That's where I'm at now. Had I been there way back in the 90s, I probably wouldn't be here today. I don't know where I'd be. Probably not. I might be dead. I don't know. The world is a strange and magical place, full of twists and turns in the multiverse. But yeah, I used to read Slush and get in trouble for it. I used to read Slush and want to help people because I thought we were in the job of making books, because that's what I signed up for. But instead, we were in the job of selling books. That's not the same thing. And that's still true for traditional publishing. They're in the job of selling books. I am in the job of, well, other than not fucking around, I'm in the job of helping writers write better. And that is wildly different. Because I believe you can write better and sell books. Whereas publishers, since they control the means of production, comrades, they're looking just to sell. And it's generally bad because I'm not supposed to reveal things behind the curtain. Because if I tell you how the sausage is made, if I tell you what things mean, if I tell you how to get around the gatekeepers, if I tell you how to knock down the walls with your hammers, comrade, if I tell you how to like do something different so that you don't have to rely on vague, shitty listicles and pointless information and sign up for $33,000 classes from people who do like vague conference calls and franchise out your work and then put their own name on it as if they did the work themselves. If I can get you to cut out all the snake oil, if I can get you to cut out all the grift, if I can get you working better in easy digestible lessons, in pretty straightforward advice without a lot of polish to it, and just sort of like, hey man, here's what you need to do. Hey, check this out. This is what's up. This thing and this thing, and try this, and here's this thing. If I can explain it to you in a way where you feel motivated and where you feel like, oh, I think I can do that now. I get it. And the light bulb goes off for you. That's what I'm trying to do. But when I do that, everybody on the other side of the curtain, everybody over there who's like, don't tell them that. Don't explain that. No. All I'm doing there is just making the people who don't like me continue to not like me. And that's fine, because I'm not in the business of getting liked by them. I'm sure they're very nice people, but we are on a different wavelength. So I'm going to keep telling you what he means. I'm going to keep explaining this stuff to you. I'm going to keep telling you how the sausage gets made. Not because I don't want you to eat sausage. I just want you to be better informed so that you, as a sausage-eating consumer, can act the way you feel best. I would rather have you be informed and be educated and be savvy than be sort of lost in the delusion that they're selling you. I don't think anybody wins when we all buy into the dream and we don't think about what's underneath it. That's what's up. Here, have some air horns while I drink tea. All right. So, originally there was a different question 9. And to be fair, it was not a great question. It was a pretty dry-ass structural question about how to fix dialogue. And the short answer is you make it sound like people. And 9 times out of 10, that means rewriting the sentence and eliminating the abundance of ellipses and eliminating the stiffness and things, which is not really the most evocative and interesting kind of question. So instead, there's a different one. Presenting the new question 9. Question number 9. Let me slide that down a little bit. Question number 9. When I change something about the story, there's all this other stuff trailing behind it from previous drafts, and they don't always go together, but end up becoming a Frankenstein's monster of messy work. How do I improve story cohesions during revisions? First of all, just so you know, I love giant questions. I mean, I'm all for like little things like what constitutes an essay? That's lethal. Love that. Nice, tight, brief. But I also like big paragraphs because I get to type these things and put them on a screen, and that fills a need I didn't know I had. So ideally, globally, revision itself is supposed to improve story cohesion just by the function of being revision. What I recommend doing, though, and what I think you're talking about that in this Frankenstein's monster view where you've got all these pieces stitched together and all these seams, what I think we need to do is insert a step in the revision process to help organize and smooth things out. And here it is. So let's suppose we have our manuscript. Let's imagine that all in our left hands, everybody. Just take a second. Picture that. We're holding a manuscript in our left hand. Got it? Now, over here in our right hand, we're going to hold all the revisions, however many. They don't have to be equal, but we're holding two imaginable. We're holding two imagined things, okay? Now, normally what we do is we take the right hand and we clap it to our left, and we immediately smash the manuscript with our revisions. But I'm going to ask you to interrupt this process. I'm going to ask you to handle it differently. I'm going to ask you to do something different. And what I want you to do is go through this pile in your right hand, go through these revisions, and before we integrate them into the text, take an extra minute and identify what they're supposed to be revising. Rather than just take it at face value, rather than just look at it and go, okay, this person says I need to fix this scene. This person says I need to fix this line. This person says I need to change this whatever. Think about, before we get into it, before you sit down and do the act of changing, before your fingers hit those keys to input those differences, think about for a second what that change is going to mean. For example, let's suppose we get a note that nobody likes your character's name, and they're going to change it to something else. Everybody says change it to something else. Okay. You can summarize that piece of feedback as, I got to change this character's name. What does that mean, though? Well, that means I'm going to probably global find and replace the name. Or if I don't want to global find and replace, I'm going to manually go through every instance in this book because I'm going to read it to myself, and every time I see the name, I'm going to change it. Think about what the change is proposing and write that down next to the revision. Change the character's name. Find and replace. Rework climax. Means I'm going to be addressing 2 scenes, 2 character actions, pages X to Y. Take a second and think about the procedural stuff underneath the activity. Okay, if I have to change this character, if I have to change this arc, where in my book does this arc show up? Is it all in this chapter? Is it a little bit in chapter 8, a little bit in chapter 6? Really think about it. This is one of those reasons, this is one of those places where having something like a story Bible or a book template or a big-ass spreadsheet that breaks down everything. By the way, if you're ever interested in having one of those templates, I have one. It'll be on the Discord in an hour? Whenever this chat's done, I'm going to go post it in Discord. If you want to join the Discord, hit the Patreon. $2 a month, you can have a thing that's going to roadmap any book you're writing. Just FYI. But you want to have some kind of document that helps you organize these things. And even if that means you just write it on the page where you wrote your revisions, just write yourself notes in the margin so that rather than just jumping right into it, you have this general sense of, so if I make this change, whatever it is, it's going to mean I have to deal with this, this, and this. And if I make that change, it's going to have to deal with that, that, and that. Makes a huge difference. Huge difference. Because all of a sudden now you know the size of the pool you're working in. It's no longer like, oh my God, I have to deal with this whole book and change so many things. No, I know that if I'm going to have to deal with this subplot, it only shows up in chapter 6, chapter 8, chapter 9, and chapter 15. And only here, and here in those chapters. And it suddenly becomes much more practical and much more organized. That's how you develop cohesion, because you organize what the revision is so that as you make those changes, they seem more naturally integrated. Because even if that means you have to write new transitional paragraphs to stitch information together, if we're using our Frankenstein monster analogy, right? And we have to just drop this new thing in, so there's going to be a bit of a gaudy seam and maybe a ragged little scar. You can smooth that language out by knowing where it is you're supposed to be stitching and knowing where it is you're supposed to be taking in or taking out or putting in. And that cohesion comes from focus, which comes from organization. That's how you fight against the, oh my God, I've left the detritus of other drafts lingering, so that you don't end up having to go back through when you're done and at the end and then suddenly realize, like, well, how do I make this work? It feels like I'm missing something. Organization from the beginning, organization in the middle helps make the end much smoother. That's how you improve your cohesion. What a fantastic replacement question. I'm so glad it came up tonight and not next week when it was proposed. Good stuff. Any other questions? I'm going to quick skim my phone to see, because somebody was texting me questions. I want to make sure I got them all. Cool. Questions? Zoom, Twitch, YouTube. It was a great question. I'm very pleased with it.
I guess I have a question.
Yes, sir. What's your question?
It's almost off topic, but not really.
You'd be
Do
surprised.
you have an opinion on whether or not gaming chairs are better than office chairs for long-term writing?
I
sitting
do.
Down,
Yes.
spot? Yeah.
Yeah, that's not off topic at all, because it has to do with our facility to write. So it's a problem I'm currently facing. And here is my consideration for these things. It has been my experience that the majority of office chairs that are fabric weaved, especially with an open back or an open seat where it's sort of mesh and very, very breathable, can be comfortable to a degree in the sense that they offer support for a lower back or hips or general spine and shoulder alignment, which can be great. The downside is, over time, if it's not the most expensive thing in the world, or it's a little bit beat up and left for shit, it can warp a little bit, and that can lead to uncomfortable compression on things. And so far, it has been my experience that since I've only ever owned office chairs, the more open and breathable and adjustable the office chair is, given my, I've lost over 100 pounds, given I'm fairly average height, but I've lost a lot of weight. and my posture is pretty stiff for any number of reasons, and I tend to sit long hours. I'm looking for something to take a lot of pressure off my hips so that my tailbone doesn't get numb, so my ass doesn't get numb, so that my lower back doesn't lock up, so my shoulders don't hunch too far over, and I end up with like a stiffness in my rhomboids. And for me, why I need to replace my office chairs, because this office chair is, over 10 years old, and like it's just beat to shit. And bigger dude, and that smushed down all the foam in the seat. And yeah, it's time to move on. Whereas a gaming chair, in the limited experience I've had with them, seems to be a lot less breathable. And it feels to me a little like I'm sitting in a baseball glove. It's a bit more cocooned. I feel a bit more held, which I guess can be a comforting thing. But at the same time, it's lacking some of that breathability. Now, I'm working in a room that is, especially in the summer without air conditioning on, can get pretty sweaty and gross. And my concern primarily is that even though I'm not like a great big dude anymore, I'm still a dude, and things sweat, and I sweat. And if it's already hot in here when I'm writing and I'm sitting in a leather chair, I don't want to end up sitting in a sweat puddle. Not that that's the most attractive way to put it in the world. I'm trying to keep it as, nice sounding as possible, but let's be real, human beings sweat. The gaming chair ideally seems like it's got all the support I want, but it's that breathability factor. And while I'm in the seven gaming chairs I have, wiped down and then put my butt in, they felt okay on my back, but long term, I don't feel the same breadth, the same size of support that I have in office chairs. Now, of course, everybody says, oh, John, you got to get a Herman Miller. John, you got to get a $1,300, $1,400, $1,500, $1,600 chair. And if you jump on YouTube and you fall into, the chair community and seating discourse, you'll go bananas, as people will decry anything under $600 as being too cheap for a chair. And I don't have $600. Not for a chair. I barely have $600, period. So I can't exactly flex and go, bring me one of those Herman Millers. Like, I'm hoping one day that, we occupy an office building for our houseless comrades so that we might liberate some chairs and distribute them to the people. But I haven't yet found a gaming chair superior to an office chair. But it comes down to not the fact that it's an office or a gaming chair, but that it's a chair that meets my needs. And the only way I was able to find out what my needs were was to sit in a couple different chairs. Everything from a dining room table chair to a folding metal chair to an office chair to a gaming chair to a crappy chair to a busted up chair, and figure out, okay, where on my body am I getting smushed? Where on my body am I getting pain? If I sit in this thing for too long, am I sliding out because it's leather and I'm wearing, a pretty silky clothes, not silky, that's not the right word, but not very rough textured clothing, and I'm just kind of sliding off at the end of the day? Like, is it a chair that the cat wants to sit on? That is also, for me, a pretty effective barometer. If I couldn't imagine, Linus, the wonder producer, sitting in a chair, chances are I don't want to sit in one either. But it comes down to knowing what I'm looking for. I need to be supported here. I need to be supported here. I like sitting a certain way. I like leaning sometimes. So these are the things I'm looking for. There's other things I don't really give a shit about, like neck pillows. I've never had one. It doesn't occur to me to stop and look for one, but I'm looking for things with very specific support. And I've narrowed it down over time for this and this and this. And it seems for me, I'm more often better suited to an office chair than a gaming chair. There are other factors. There's cost, there's weight, the fact that I got to carry this thing in the offices on, up the stairs. But beyond that, for me, what I need is met better by an office chair in my experience so far. That could change tomorrow when all of a sudden somebody's like, hey, John, here's this chair. It's in your budget. This is what's up. But it comes down to, first and foremost, figuring out what would facilitate better productivity for you. Do you need something on your lower back? Do you need something with your hips? Do you need both? Do you need something to keep your shoulders straight? Do you need like a chair that's real deep because you got long ass legs like my brother does? Do you need something that's real narrow like his girlfriend? So she, there's less leg on her. She's more, waist up than waist down. So she needs a more narrow seat. and then her feet don't touch the floor, and we all make fun of her. Hi, Brenda. It depends on what you need, and the only way you're going to figure that out is by sitting in an uncomfortable chair and taking stock first. For me, right now, I'm leaning pro office chair, less gaming chair, both for cost, because holy shit, these things are expensive. And two, I haven't quite found what I'm looking for yet. Yeah, my concern with a gaming chair is that in the end, because it's a big deal. Like, I tend to have chairs, and like, I got this chair when I wasn't sober. Like, I've had this chair for ages. And like, I don't want to own an uncomfortable chair forever. I've already made plenty of purchasing mistakes in my lifetime. I've bought things that I expected to have for years and I couldn't wait to get rid of them. And a chair, since I'm in it like all the damn time, I want it to be comfortable. So beyond the executive dysfunction issues I suffer from in terms of OCD and anxiety with making the wrong choice, I lean office chair. Probably with some nice rollerblade wheels on it so that I don't like have to deal with the crappy plastic casters. But again, that's just me, because if I'm going to do it, I'm going to, be real picky about it. That's my view on gaming versus office chairs. Yeah. Great question. Excellent question. Not off topic at all. Good stuff. Anybody else? Else we will march on to question 10, wherein I will be pulling the curtain back yet again. All right. On to 10. Question 10. John, if I'm having trouble finishing a second draft, what does that tell you as a coach? It is possible Zoom is cutting out. It is possible Zoom is cutting out. That might be a thing. Zoom be like that sometimes. How unpleasant. It's fine. I will carry on. Question 10. If I'm having trouble finishing a second draft, what does that tell me as a coach? A lot. Probably a lot more than you'd like. Here's what it tells me. First of all, if you're having trouble finishing a second draft, why are you having trouble finishing the second draft? Is it that you just aren't sure what to write? That's a legit thing. All of these things are legit. It's not like one is automatically, oh my God, so super wrong. But if you're having trouble finishing a second draft, is that because how you are approaching the draft could be an issue? Is it that, the strategy you're using to figure out your writing schedule or figure out your writing time is a problem? Is it an indecision or decision paralysis issue where you've got to figure out, like, you could go in any direction. This could happen, that could happen, this could happen, that could happen. And you got to figure out, you just have to make some decisions because writing is the act of making decisions. Is it a matter of, despite all your best efforts and all your best organization and really, really saying you really, really want to be writing, you just hold yourself back? Because you're afraid of going forward, because you're afraid of what happens next, because you're afraid of failing or you're afraid of succeeding. Maybe. These are all the questions that come immediately to mind for me when you tell me you can't finish a second draft. I want to look and see if these obstacles you're talking about are created by you, you're bringing them to the party, or whether they're based on information you've acquired from the ever great, wonderful, never wrong, never full of shit, #writing community. Or if it's something greater, if it's just a matter of, I genuinely don't know how to do this, John. All of these things are valid. All of these things happen. All of these things are real problems that everybody has. The important thing is what you do after you identify this problem. Okay, so you've got trouble finishing a second draft. We talk through it, whether that's a 20-minute conversation, a 30-minute conversation, a 60-minute conversation, a multiple-week conversation. We work our way through and we try to pinpoint as honestly as possible, hey, here's why I think I'm having trouble. And that's sometimes uncomfortable because sometimes it comes down to, I'm really just afraid. And It's really hard for people to admit that they're afraid. It's scary because you might say, John, I'm afraid to finish this thing. And you might be afraid that I'm going to go, oh my God, you're a terrible person. Go away. I'm not, just for the record. That's the opposite of what I'll tell you. I'm going to tell you something to the effect of, I'm really sorry you're afraid. I want to make this less scary for you. I got your back. I got your back just as much now as before. I'm with you to the end, man. Let's do this. And then we go from there. But for a lot of people, it comes down to, I'm afraid of succeeding. I'm afraid of failing. I'm afraid of getting stuck in some kind of revision hell cycle where I write a third draft and maybe a fourth draft, like that other question. But what it tells me, if you're having trouble finishing a second draft, is it a structure thing? Is it a decision thing? Is it a fear thing? Is it a time management thing? You have trouble finishing a second draft because, I don't know, you just got married, or you lost your job, or you just had kids, or your kids are home for the summer, or you're trying to get back to school, and there's a million other things pulling you in a billion trillion other directions. Loads of things could be the reason you're not finishing the second draft. None of them are because you're a bad human or a bad writer. And if you jump there, if that's where you go, oh my God, I can't finish the second draft, I suck. Well, that's what you have a coach for. That's why you got somebody who's going to sit there and go, you don't suck. You're not going to suck. You're just having a moment. And then we have this moment together and we work our, if for some reason, it's a straight up decision-making issue of, well, what are all the things that could happen? It could go in any number of ways for this scene. And then I don't know what happens after this next in the story. We just talk about it. What would be the coolest thing to happen? How do we make that happen? Okay, if we go in this direction, what would happen next? None of it's etched in stone. We're just going to pick and choose and write it down a little bit, then pick and choose again. And remember, it's a second draft. No one's saying you got to publish this thing straight away. So there's no real reason to say, oh my God, I wrote it down. It's got to stay this way. It's a second draft. It's only slightly more firm and only slightly more cohesive than a first draft. So it tells me a lot. But primarily, it tells me that you're probably scared and that I should do my best to figure out what's freaking you out and then figure out how to help you get around it. There was a question, and it was a large one. Big question! It came with an exclamation point. Is there a term for when writers throw in a big smart word to show off their huge lexicons? Well, they're trying to show off something huge, but end up breaking the tone and voice because it sounds out of place. Yeah, they're just trying to be smart. They're just trying to show off. They're trying to flex. How do you avoid doing this as a writer? I made a face. I realized I just made a face in an audio recording. You avoid doing this as a writer by not trying to follow the need to prove yourself. You don't have to prove yourself. You don't have to be big and smart all of a sudden. You don't have to throw the $10 word in as if you lacking that word means somehow in some way that you're a bad writer or you're dumb or you're a dork, or you deserve to get shoved into a locker and somebody takes your lunch money. None of that is the case. At all. You can just use a simple word. In fact, the simple word is often the best because it's going to be the clearest to you and it's going to maintain that tone and maintain that voice. Sure, the big words are great. Everybody loves when you break out the abattoir or irrumatio or Califigian. These are delightful words with wonderful things you can Google later, but none of them are themselves material if I can't put a picture of it in your head. If I can't help you understand the word, if I can't help you understand that because I'm using this word, I want you to picture a certain thing a certain way, it doesn't matter what the word is. Above all else, most important compared to everything is your ability as a writer to put a movie in the reader's brain. Whatever word or words puts that movie in the reader's brain, those are the words to use. You don't need to hyper impress somebody. You don't need to, demonstrate that, oh, I too have a word of the day calendar. He's quite the philodendron. No, just use whatever word is clearest. Okay? And then it just comes down to having the confidence of knowing that the words you are using, big, small, medium, or whatever, are putting the movie in the reader's head. And you just keep writing. You don't have to impress anybody. You're already impressing them. You're writing a book. Impression made. Give yourself some credit. All right. Good question. Big question indeed. Yeah, it feels like a word of the day. It feels like all of a sudden, hey, we're throwing this word in here. And I got to tell you, I'm guilty of it sometimes. And sometimes you'll catch me doing it. Like I get a word of the day in the email. And sometimes it's a great word that, oh my God, that's perfect. And other days I look at it like, how the hell is this going to come up in regular conversation? Because if it doesn't come up in regular conversation, it is unlikely that I'm going to find a way to use it. And when I do use it, everybody's going to go, what the shit word was that? What? And then I just get the extra dopamine boost of like 2 seconds of being like, oh, I get to use a new word. Haha. Well, that's only enjoyable for me and only enjoyable the first time. Not really worth it in my opinion. You're very welcome. Thank you for asking your question. So we are way early. I noticed that these especially since we moved to other streaming platforms, I've sped up. So far, in the weeks I have done this, nobody has said it's been too fast. So, hurrah! We'll go from there. All right, let's march on though. We are at our last 2 questions, which, as always, means it's time for gentle advice. Gentle advice, where I'm going to talk to you now in soothing tones. Well, actually, I'm going to get a mouthful of water and then talk to you in soothing tones. I've got 2 related gentle advice, and I'm going to really, really do my best to be gentle and advicey in them. Because, it's a thing. What I am going to do is, we're up to gentle advice. I am going to nuke the Zoom window because there's nobody in Zoom with me. So give me 1 second while I do that on the fly. Boom. That's mostly just for me and my happiness. Okay. Can I center this now that I have more room? Let's do that, right? Yeah, let's put it front and center the way it should be because it's gentle advice. Yeah, all right. Move it on the fly like a big boy production. Gentle advice. How do I handle it when I feel other writers don't seem to understand the level of work and determination that goes into making their writing dreams, a reality? Okay. What's this question saying? What do I do? How do I handle it when I think other people don't understand how serious or how hard this thing, this dream, this job is? That's what this question is asking. It is a question that comes up in I don't know how many forums. It comes up in critique groups. It comes up in Discord servers. It comes up in Facebook groups. It comes up in newsletter chains. It comes up in, group texts. It comes up in classes. It comes up everywhere. Because there's always going to be some segment of the population of writers who want to be writers. They want to do the writing. They want to have the accomplishment and the goals and rewards of writing. But when it comes down to doing the work, when the work isn't big and dramatic and splashy and exciting, and it actually turns into work, and it is possible that work takes on a number of hours comparable to, if not in excess of, what they would expect as a job, when all of a sudden this thing they were doing on the weekends and they were just hanging out and just being creative and it was no big deal and there were no stakes, and all of a sudden now it's work. what they tend to do, some people, not all, but what some tend to do is back away from it. Take it less seriously. It's no big deal. I got more time. It's whatever. Fine. It's a critique group. It's fine. It's Discord. It's a Facebook group. It's whatever. Haha, lol, emoji, GIF, etc., etc. And when you take a group of those people and you gather them together and you pair them off with or stick them around people who are taking it more seriously for whatever reason, whether it's financial necessity or creative necessity or just urgency or a genuine want to learn something when everybody else seems to be in the fucking around business, what you end up with is a really split and dissatisfied unit of people. And it can eventually become cliquish. It can eventually become divisive. It can, in the long term, be to your benefit to kind of boot some people out or let some people leave of their own accord as a result. Because ultimately, how you handle it is going to say an awful lot about what's important to you. If you stick around in an environment where the majority opinion and the regular attitude collectively is not supportive in the same way that you are about your goal, every time you engage with this group of people, you are, to some degree, letting the other crabs in the bucket pull you down. You're letting other people hold you back. You're letting this other idea pervade your thinking. You can say you're being serious. You can say it's really great. But when you look around at all these people who are doing a whole lot of talking and not a whole lot of writing, and when you see these people talk more than write and it frustrates you, the question there, the conflict, if we want to go back to Monday's discussion about plot and conflict, the conflict there is, why are you there? By, challenging, improving, helping, rising tide, lifting all ships. And you're just sort of there because you're there. You don't need to be there. It's up to you how you handle it. If it doesn't bother you, because it's just, this is my walk, complain about, oh my God, did you see this thing? If it's no big deal, you don't have to let it bother you. And we can just hang out. Well, they're not going to, not going to get where you want to get, and that's on them, and they have to reconcile that. But it is not always your job, and I'm speaking to the serious writer when I say this, it's not always your job, person who's on a vector, person with momentum, person on a mission. It's not your job to try and drag the people with you who are going, but don't seem to be putting in the effort to get where you're going. Sometimes you got to let those people stay where they are. And that's a tough lesson. That's a hard thing to do, especially if you're like me, the sort of person who wants to help as many people as possible, because recognizing that some people don't want to be helped. They just want to be seen in the perimeter or the area of those people getting help, because they like the shine on the chrome rather than the possession of the chrome itself. They like the feeling and the attitude of, I'm a writer. Yeah, but you're not getting anywhere. A writer writes. Producers produce. Creators create. They don't just talk about it. They don't just dream about it and tell you they keep dreaming about it. They're doing something about it. You can point to the progress, and they're excited and eager to point to the progress rather than just talk about one day. How you choose to handle that says a lot about where you're willing to go and where you're willing to stay. For me, you need to choose. Why would I hang out in a situation that isn't helping me if helping me is as important to me as I say it is? Is it something I can engage in a lesser way? I just check in periodically, hey, what's up? Because I got to get back to work. Or is this more of a thing where, like, I'm here and I feel almost like I have to carry these people on my back, and I got to, like a car jack. I just got to boost everything. Because you don't have to. It's not your job. You're a writer. Your job is to write and produce the best work you can and use every skill and everything humanly possible and available to help you succeed in a good, positive way. And sometimes that means other people around you, you can't save. You can't fix. You can't help. And they might be the people in charge. They might be your peers. They might be your best friend. They might be randos you joke with. But if there are people who don't seem to understand that what they're getting into is more serious than they're taking it, you don't have to go through the mental or emotional labor of trying to convince them. The best thing you could do, the best ideal case scenario, is you put in the work, you do what you got to do for what you want to do, and by osmosis and exposure, they will go, oh, I should take it more seriously. I want to be like this person. I want to succeed the way they are. And we go from there. But that's not a given. That's not a standard. That's a possibility rather than a definite. I hope that answers your gentle advice question. Let's do one more. Oh man, it's the flip side of the other one. How do you deal with it when others don't seem to take the work and determination you're putting in to make your dream a serious reality? All right. This happens. This happens to loads of people. They have family, they have friends, they have partners, they have kids who look at what they're doing and they don't see the hard work. Now, maybe they don't see the hard work because they're not present for you doing the work. They just know, oh, I wrote today, and their idea of what that means is very limited because they only saw you for 2 minutes or only talked to you for 5 minutes. Or instead of a lack of evidence, they're letting an opinion dominate their view. Well, I think a writer sits around all day and just goofs off and then periodically scribbles something and calls it a day. They don't work as hard as I do. And they sit in some sort of position of judgment, or they sit in some kind of way where they are letting an unproven, untested idea become a hard and fast rule carved in stone. You don't have to convert those people into believers, because depending on the person, it's very likely that the harder you try to convert them, the harder they're going to resist, because people don't want to have their status quos changed unless it has a material benefit to them. And that's not because they're bad people. It's just because that's how social animals are. If you want to have people take you seriously, if you want to be seen as being worth being taken seriously, then you need to continue producing seriously. You're not going to win mom over just because you tell her over and over, Mom, I'm really serious about this. You're going to win her over when you can say, Mom, I'm serious about this, and here's 10,000 words I wrote today. Or here's my finished book. You're going to get the first copy. Or, hey, I'm looking at these book covers. What do you think? And not so much to get their opinion in the sense that they're going to make the final decision, but you're involving them at a stage in the process where it is contingent on there being work done. If you're always in a position, if you're always in some kind of mode where you have to constantly feel like in order for you to go forward, you need to first win over other folks, you are always setting yourself up for disappointment, because those other people, thanks to the power of free will, can always move the goalposts. And if that's the case, you will always end up disappointed. Like, if I say Charlie Brown in the football, will you understand what I mean? The idea of this time the little girl's not going to move it and I'm going to kick it. This time I'm going to kick it. This time I'm going to do it. This time I'm serious. And then every time, yoink goes the football, up in the air, oh good grief goes Charlie Brown. It's not enough to just say you're serious. I'll say that again. It is not enough to say that you are serious. It is not enough to say that I worked really hard today. And it's not enough to jump on the internet and tell all your friends that, oh my God, writing is so hard, you guys. That's not evidence of anything other than your ability to have an internet access. If you're taking it seriously and you can point to the accomplishment you've done and you can point to the work you've done and you're happy with it for the day, not forever, just today, just right now, nobody can take that from you. Why would you ever let somebody else take that from you? Why would you give that up? You don't need to. You're not going to convince them. You don't need to convince them. You were writing yesterday. They didn't believe in you yesterday either, but why today is it all of a sudden a problem? It is possible. It is very possible that you will go through all these hurdles. You will do all this work, and you will produce the book, and it will get published. Either you'll publish it yourself, or a publisher will acquire it. And at the end of the day, they will still choose to disbelieve, because when it comes, there will always be another criteria by which they can judge you. Well, when you were writing, it was about finishing. Now that it's finished, it's about publishing. Now that it's publishing, it's about the money you make. Now that it's about the money you make, it's about, will you do it again? There's always going to be something for the people who are dead set on constantly disliking your effort. And in the end, that is a worse Sisyphus than the other Sisyphus we talked about. You're not going to be able to persuade them. You don't need to spend that much emotional labor trying to. You can still love them. You can still care about them. But you don't have to prove yourself to them. Not in the long run. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to you and it comes down to your work and what you're hoping to do and what you're hoping to accomplish. And you're in charge of that, not them. But you don't have to constantly launch some campaign to get them to like your work. I'm 42. I'll be 43 at the end of the week. And I don't really think most of my family understands what I do. And they haven't understood what I've done in 15 years, if not more. And I can explain it over and over. I've given them the recordings. I've pointed things out. I've, been in rooms where they've heard me give workshops. They've heard me tell jokes. They've heard me tell stories. They've heard me explain things. They've seen crowds show up. They still don't get it. And it's very frustrating because I would love for them to go, oh my God, John, you're amazing at this. Good for you. And they're just not going to. And that's maybe one of the reasons why I'm in therapy or something. Who knows? But the end result is I get to determine whether or not I let that rattle me. Sometimes I do. And those are the days I try not to let anybody else know. And some days it's just kind of like, yeah, well, they don't get it. I know how hard I'm working. I can point to the work I've done. And that's enough. I can tell you in the past what I used to do. What I used to do was drugs. And that was not the best way to handle it, because I don't know if you ever tried communicating seriously with someone when you are unable to form your own coherent words. It makes it really hard to explain to somebody that you're really serious about your job when you are like drooling and half conscious. It's very hard to be taken seriously that way. Just a heads up, just some friendly advice from me to you. That's how I would handle it. That's how I deal with it. I do the best work I can. If people are going to get on board, they're going to get on board. I wish more people would. I hope more people do. I make it possible so that they can. But I can't always control it. It's a tough lesson. That's what's up. What a great, gentle advice tonight. All right. Any questions from anybody? Twitch? YouTube? Me in Zoom by myself? Anybody? If not, we're going to the outro. They did go together very nicely. It's almost as if, I picked the one I wanted. And they fit together nicely on purpose. It was clever. All right. I think that's it. I think then it's time. I think it's time we go to the outro. No, turn that off. Shall we? To the outro. Well, this was a night. It was delightful. I apologize for the, I did notice, now that I'm looking at the error log, I did notice a couple spots where the audio clipped out. I will investigate that. I'm pretty sure I know what the cause is, but I will work on that. Thanks so much, everybody, for letting me ramble about all the things and talk about editors and dialogue and what an essay is and how to make voices formal and how to deal with people who don't take it seriously or people who do take it seriously. Thanks for everything. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being understanding about last week. Yeah, it was really nice to be back. The next time I will talk to you, the next time we will be together is technically on August the 9th at 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on Twitch and YouTube, where I will be talking about how to build better characters, specifically protagonists and main characters. The next time we will be together for a chat, though, will be Wednesday, August the 11th, right here, Twitch, YouTube, and Zoom, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you have questions, let me know. Find me on social media. The best place to do that is Twitter, twitter.com/awesome_John. Until then, all power to all people. You are not alone. I love you. You're great. I hope you have a good night. Take care of yourself. Take care of somebody else. Create good art. Feed your art. Know that I believe in you even when you don't believe in yourself. And I will talk to you very, very soon. See ya! All right. And now we end.